Hi everyone, welcome to part 7 of VRM video series. In this video, we will see field normalization, vendor tiering assessment. If you see here, let's look at field normalization, this application. Right, it comes with a lot of capabilities, but we'll look at a high-level use case. Right, so if you go to normalizations under configuration, you'll see the definitions here. Now let's look at company name example. Uh, so let's quickly change the scope to global. And now if you see here, you can see that the normal values are is tel, and then there is no alias values defined. Now in the rules, if you see generic del, normal is tel, rule says name matches rejects tel /b dot. So which means if this regular expression is matched in the company name, then we'll set this normalized value as del. So let's open this and see how it looks like. Yeah, so if you see here, the condition that is defined as name matches rejects del /b dot asterisk. So yeah, if this rule is met, then we'll set the name as del. And then we'll mark all the other records as aliases. Now to test this regular expression, we'll use this regex 101. So here, this is my regular expression, and here I'm giving a test string. So I'll start by giving the test string as del, and then let's say for test string as del inc, then this also will become del, and incorporated becomes del, or del organization becomes del, and del limited becomes del. So basically all the combinations where del is present as a word boundary, so it becomes del, right? So that's how this works. So next we'll talk about vendor tiering assessment. So vendor risk manager or vendor risk assessor sets up vendor tiering assessment by matching tiering a questionnaire template and the vendor by matching. So basically this is the matching criteria: tiering questionnaire template and vendor, and assign internal assessors to complete tiering assessment questionnaire. So yeah, so we'll just to quickly recap. Vendor tiering assessment: a risk manager or risk assessor will set up vendor tiering assessment by matching tiering questionnaire template and the vendor, and will assign it to internal assessors to complete tiering assessment questionnaire. Score is calculated based on average. Different sections of assessments are assigned to users. So internal assessors will complete the assessment. So how do you access this tiering assessments? So we'll navigate to vendor risk, and here if you minimize all of them, under tiering assessments you can see different options: my tiering assessments, my open, all open, and all tiering assessments. So let's open all tiering assessments, and we'll open one in draft state. So as you can see here, this is the state flow: draft, awaiting response, tiering, assignment, and closed. Applies to a vendor or engagement, and vendor is given here, and this is assigned to an internal user. The tier level can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, starting from very high to very low. And here again you have tiering assessment schedule, which is planned duration is 1 day, and then if it is in the past, it shows in red color. Notes and comments, and then you have 3 tabs: tiering questionnaire, vendor tiering scale, assessment instance. So tiering questionnaire, uh, depends on what vendor risk manager or assessor has assigned to this vendor. Tiering scale tells you what is the minimum and maximum range for each of these like score and how the vendor tier is identified. So 80 to 100 is very high, 0 to 90 is very low. Uh, so the vendor uh, tiering assessment will remain in awaiting response state until all assessors have submitted their response. Now, in order to set up vendor tiering assessment, we start with tiering questionnaire template plus vendor plus internal user. It will be in this table SN VDR risk ASMT VDR tiering assessment. So if you see the table name here, it is SN VDR risk ASMT VDR tiering assessment. Next, we'll look at setup. In under tiering setup, you have two options. One is tiering questionnaire templates, default vendor tiering scale. So we'll look at tiering questionnaire templates. Under that, you have uh, two options available out of the box or two templates. The first one is basic preliminary vendor tiering questionnaire, and the classification is tiering questionnaire template. And next you have sample questionnaire with role assigned to various sections. Now we'll look at the sample questionnaire. Let's change the application scope to GRC. Vendor risk management. If you see here, now we have different sections available. Uh, and if you expand the first one, nature of relationship with the vendor, it has all these questions. Uh, then let's try to personalize this and see if we can bring roles in the list. Now, if you see here, contract manager is a role required to access this metric category. And then similarly, nature of interaction with vendor. For this, you need assessment reviewer role. And then this has no role, which means everybody can see this section. So when this questionnaire is assigned to a internal user to tier this vendor, depending on the role, the corresponding sections gets displayed. So this will be displayed to contract manager. This will be displayed to vendor assessment reviewer, and this will be displayed to everyone. And to see the questions under each of these categories, you can see that these are all the questions. Similarly, the next one you have these are his questions. Then finally, the last one, you have all those questions. Next, we'll look at assessment submission rules. There's a section for that. So if you see under that, we have two options: tier-based submission, provider-based submission. Because we're talking about tiering, we'll talk about tier-based submission. Here you have all this assessment templates. So depending on the tier, which is 1 through 5, 1 being high, 5 being one being very high, 5 being very low, different assessment templates are available. For example, if you open this one here, this is applicable to all the vendors. And assessment template is security assessment critical risk, because this is a tier 1. Uh, uh, this is applicable to all tier 1 vendors. Auto submit to vendor. If tier based submission has a vendor defined, then that applies to vendor and its engagements. If not, the default tier based assessment submission rule would be applied. So here, since no vendor is defined, then it a default tier-based assessment submission will be applied, uh, which is default here. So yeah, as you can see here, depending on the tier, different assessment templates are available. So what happens in some of the scenarios, we'll talk about that here. So tier-based assessment submission rules, auto submit to vendor. If tier changes, it will not only create an assessment instance and submit to vendor. If there is a primary contact, this is a catch. If not, there will be error. So when we have this auto submit to vendor checkbox checked, so if you go to a tier-based assessment submission rule, this checkbox auto submit to vendor automatically submit an assessment to vendor when rule is triggered, which means when the tier changes. At the same time, uh, if there is a primary contact for the vendor. If not, then it will throw an error. Alerts question document response not associated to any risk scoring rules. Only active questionnaire document requests have been added to assessment. So some of the alerts that you will see, questionnaire document request not associated to any risk scoring rules. So the risk scoring rules are available. Right? So when a assessment gets associated to a vendor, then you will see these alerts. If any of the questionnaire document request does not have any associated risk scoring rules, and also you'll see that only active questionnaire document request have been added to assessment. Next is external monitoring vendor scoring configuration. So we have vendor tier, risk scoring, external risk rating. So here we are trying to get the risk rating through an external integration. So for that, we will first find the correct store app that we want. So depending on from which external system we want to get the risk rating. For example, if it's BitSight or UpGuard or Recorded Future or Security Scorecard, and we need subscription with the scoring company. So we'll go to store and we'll try to search these. So I'm currently on ServiceNow store. We'll search for vendor risk, and here we can see look for integrations. And then we'll search for, so if you see here, if I search for BitSight, you'll see that BitSight connector is here, and then you scroll down, you'll see this security scorecard for vendor risk management, or similarly record future for vendor risk management, BitSight for vendor risk management, and so on. So you have all these integrations available, interiors for vendor risk management, Black Kite, Panorace, and so on. Yeah, that talks about various store apps which are available for integration. Now, we'll see what is the setup required to do this third-party setup within the platform. So the role required is vendor manager, and these are the steps which are required. First, we create third-party provider record, then third-party services record, and ability for submission rule. So three options. Third one is optional, but there are three steps. The first one is create third-party provider record. Next is third-party services record, and then the last is an optional step, which is ability for submission rule. Now, how to do that? First, we'll go to a module called third-party provider setup. So here, if you can see, there is a section called third-party provider setup. We'll expand that. And here you have third-party providers, third-party provider services, third-party scores, third-party sub-factors. Four options are there. So we'll start with third-party providers. And if you see here, these are all the providers which are available. BitSite, EcoValidus, which I have installed, Interos, Rapid Ratings and Upgrade. So if you go to BitSite, for example, then you have to provide name, short description, does it use multi-factor authentication, the URL and logo. And then under that you have a related list called third-party provider services. And then you have these options here. So let's open a new window. And here you see that for score type of overall risk, security risk, you have these options. So look at security risk. And underneath that you have score type, which has all these options. And then risk area, you have all those options. So score type has overall environmental, financial, geopolitical, legal, operational, privacy, regulatory, reputational, resiliency, security, strategic. And then risk area as, yeah, this is not changing based on this, so they are independent. So in the risk area, we have security, anti-bribery and corruption, business continuity, compliance, default, environmental, financial, privacy, reputational, resiliency, security, and ECG. So there are different options. And then you have the option to copy mapping from if you want to copy from somewhere else. Now this is a mapping. So basically this is mapping between what is provided by the provider and what it maps to in ServiceNow. So basically here we're trying to normalize it. So here we can decide if it's a rating based score. If yes, then you check it. Each row represents one of the final ratings. Fill in the rows with your ratings or ranges. At least 3 rows need to be defined. If you have more than 5 ratings, you can enter more than 1 rating per row separated by commas. So critical from critical to. Uh, so basically we're mapping it to critical, high, moderate, low, minor. This is what we're mapping it to. So basically the goal is to map this to, so the goal is to map these scores to critical, high, moderate, low and minor. And so as you can see here, the ranges are defined. 801 to 1000 is critical, 601 to 800 is high, 401 to 600 is moderate, 201 to 400 is low, and then 0 to 200 is minor. Now, if you have more than 5 ratings, only 5 is allowed, then you can enter more than 1 rating per row separated by commas. You need to have at least 3 rows defined. Fill the rows with your ratings or ranges. That's the range. If it's a rating, you can put rating here. If you do that, then the range will go away. You just give the rating here. Each row represents one of the final ratings. Now, there's the mapping, there's the scores. So if you open one of them, normalized score is, raw score is 500, normalized score is 500, normalized rating is 3. So if you go back, 400 to 600 is 3, that's where it is 3. Similarly, if it is 793, it will become high. 620 also will become high. So that's how the normalized score is identified, normalized rating is identified. So this is about third-party provider service and how it looks like. And we can add it for different score types and risk areas. When third party does their scoring, it will go into third party score table SN VDR ASMT security score. So we are referring to this table here, SN VDR risk ASMT security score. So what is normalized score? Multiple third parties may score differently. Mapping in ServiceNow does normalization. So we're saying that we can get the scores from different third parties. So we're trying to use the mapping capability to normalize it. So that's the scope of this video. We will talk about assessment configuration in the next video. Thank you.